Councillors, Chief Officers, ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding to receive the Worshipful, the Mayor of Knowsley, Councillor Jackie Harris.
Thank you, be seated. Councillors, welcome to the meeting and welcome to everyone in the public gallery. Can I remind everyone that all mobile phones should be turned to silent for the duration of the meeting, and can I ask all members to ensure that they use their microphones. Please note that as usual the Council will be filming and recording this meeting. This will include people sitting in the public gallery. A copy of the film will be uploaded to the Knowsley Council's YouTube site in due course following this meeting. Can I also refer to everyone in the order of the papers that has been placed in front of you, then on each seat in the public gallery. Thank you. Item 1, declarations of interest. Lynn?
There's been a number of declarations this evening which are referenced on the order paper and will be set out in detail in the minutes of the meeting.
Thank you. Item 2, the corporate plan. Councillor Morgan.
Can I have pleasure in moving that report, Madam Mayor?
Thank you. Councillor Sean Donnelly.
Madam Mayor, can I second the recommendations and reports?
Thank you. Councillor Morgan, do you wish to speak on this motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Colleagues, in March 2017, the Council set out its ambitious corporate plan to be delivered over 3 years. I want to take this opportunity to congratulate everyone involved. The Council's hard-working officers and of course my colleagues in the Labour Group for their hard work and contribution towards another successful year. We continue to demonstrate what a great Labour Council can do for local residents. The report before the Council tonight recommends that we should keep going for a further year with the 5 priorities included in the current corporate plan. You might say, if it ain't broke, then don't fix it. I therefore ask members of the Council to endorse the 12-month extension of the current corporate plan so that we can continue to focus our resources and our efforts on what is important for Knowsley and continue to build on our significant achievements. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Councillor Sean Donnelly, do you wish to speak?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any other members who wish to speak on the motion? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Much of the corporate plan we can agree with. However, by extending the corporate plan for up to 12 months, the Council should make sure it doesn't allow new housing development to accelerate out of control. There are now new requirements in the plan under section 4.25 little 2 and 4.25 little 4 to develop a comprehensive plan to respond to the climate change emergency by becoming carbon neutral by 2040 and all that entails, and to sustain our parks and green spaces positively, helping with social health and the well-being of local residents. This, however, appears to be a huge contradiction in terms if in particular new housing continues to be accelerated. Our group objects to the words accelerate. We did it last year, and this is solely in relation to new housing, which is section 4 little 2D. And we would like our objections to be recorded in the minutes, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak? Councillor Cashman.
Sorry. Madam Mayor, just to echo Councillor Smith's comments there, we agree with most of the principles set out in the corporate plan. There's just one that I'd like our objection, which again echoing what Councillor Smith has said. It's the 4.2.4 section, the first part, particularly the statement regarding future house building. While we welcome the house building on appropriate land, Madam Mayor, we don't welcome house building on the green belt or areas of land that isn't appropriate. So other than that point, Madam Mayor, I'm happy to support the extension of this plan and look more closely at it next year. Thank you.
Councillor Cashman, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Likewise, whilst I support in principle a large number of the goals and objectives of the corporate plan, I feel like I would like to once again place on record my ongoing concerns regarding the unmanageable housing targets set out in the proposal. In fact, I find it rather insulting that the part regarding creating a sustainable borough and tackling climate change is inserted directly after the document outlines the Council's commitment to accelerating housing development. In fact, the plan also references the target of building 6,800 new houses by 2028. Whilst I'll be supporting the plan due to its commitment to education, health and wellbeing and social care, I'd like to make it clear that it's my firm belief that we cannot meet the target of our climate emergency declaration whilst accelerating the destruction of our green belt. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members? Councillor Ashton.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Then both Councillor Cashman and Councillor Taylor won't have any objection then to not accepting the extra precept that those houses actually bring to their respective town councils. Prescott, 6% increase in their precept because of the house building that this council has actually facilitated. Whiston, 3%. Tens of thousands of pounds have been going into their coffers for the last few years because of the house building programme that Knowsley's facilitated. So if they're so against it, hand the money back to us. We'll know what to do with it.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton. Anyone else wishes to speak? Councillor Morgan?
No.
Would you like to speak now? Okay, thank you.
No further comments, Madam.
Okay, thank you. All those in favour of this, take a vote. Thank you. All those against, please. Would anyone like to abstain? Motion's carried. Thank you. Knowsley's 2030 strategy. Councillor Graham Morgan, I believe you wish to move in recommendations in respect of this item.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I move this report?
Thank you. Councillor Donnelly.
Happy to second that report.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan, do you wish to speak on this motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Colleagues, this report presents the draft Knowsley 2030 strategy for our consideration. The long-term strategy is a shared plan which has been developed alongside our partner organisations. We have also undertaken widespread consultation with Knowsley residents, businesses and community groups. By working in this Knowsley Better Together way, we have developed a shared vision of our future which we can now all work towards. I'm sure you will all agree with me that the people who live, work and study in Knowsley know this place better than anyone. And this strategy could not have been developed without their support. So I'd like to thank all of those people across the borough who gave their time and shared their insights so far. They have confirmed with us that the things most important to them include living in a safe, welcoming and attractive neighbourhoods and being able to enjoy vibrant local town centres. They told us that they wanted our plans to provide good opportunities for all our residents, including education and jobs. They also want to see improvements to public transport. Our communities talk about Knowsley as a place where people and organisations look out for each other. And with this in mind, they were clear that we make sure we continue to protect our most vulnerable residents. And residents also told us about their concerns for climate change and want us to take real action and reduce its impact. The Labour Group has listened to the views expressed by our residents, and we have put together the budget proposals to be discussed later on with this consultation in mind. Madam Mayor, I am pleased to move the recommendations in this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Councillor Donnelly, do you wish to speak?
Can I reserve me right?
Thank you. Are there any other members who wish to speak on this motion? No. Councillor Graham Morgan, would you like to respond before I put any other motions to the vote?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? Thank you. Would anybody like to abstain? Thank you. The motion is carried. Item 4, the robust of estimates and adequacy of the financial reserves. Does the Exec Director of Resources have anything to add?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have nothing to add to the report at this stage.
Thank you. Councillor Ashton?
Unless you're removing the recommendations contained in the report, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Graham Morgan?
Can I second that report, Madam Mayor?
Thank you. Any questions, comments from the members of the council? No. There's no comments or questions. All those in favour of the report? Thank you. All those against? Would anybody like to abstain? The motion is carried. Item 5 to 12 are to be moved together. Number 5 up to 12. Can we have Councillor Jane Ashton, I believe you wish to move the recommendation.
Happy to move the recommendations contained in all those reports, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan.
Pleasure to move and second in those, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Ashton, do you wish to speak on this motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In an era of unpredictable politics, there has been one constant during the last 10 years. Knowsley has been repeatedly battered by unfair, unbalanced, unnecessary government funding cuts. First by a coalition of Tories and Lib Dems, and then by a succession of Tory governments. During that time, we were forced to make cuts to services, facilities and jobs in order to manage and balance our budget. The people of Knowsley have suffered more than anyone in the country, simply because we don't live in a Tory heartland. But Madam Mayor, let us not forget, we have also suffered because another political party in the coalition didn't stand up for Knowsley either. What a great example of Lib Dems in power. Madam Mayor, as I stand here tonight, I'm proud that this Labour Council can always be counted on to stand up for local people. Make no mistake, our decisive, positive and well-managed approach to dealing with previous year's budget problems allows me this year to propose the most positive budget we've had in a decade. And if I may, Madam Mayor, I'd like to start with a few headlines about our Labour budget proposals tonight. Far from asking for any cuts to services, we will invest in all of them. 12 million in new permanent funding to deal with demand and cost increases in key services for the most vulnerable people in our communities. Another 14.5 million of additional investment in key priority areas. That's a total of £26.5 million of investment. A staggering achievement at a time when many other local authorities are struggling. And it's not some kind of accidental position that we find ourselves in, Madam Mayor. We're in this position because we made the toughest decisions and we held our nerve. Our strategy of inclusive economic growth has brought us additional council tax and business rates. Our involvement in the 100% business rate retention pilot has meant that we've gained additional multi-million-pound income from our growth efforts. Negotiations on our pension fund has saved us a further £5.7 million a year moving forward. Just a couple of examples of how we've managed to get ourselves in this positive position. However, Madam Mayor, since 2010, this council has had to cope with a 57% reduction in our government funding. £100 million worth of savings that we've had to identify and implement over the last decade, at a time when we've seen demand for our services continue to rise. When they issue our funding settlement, the government make it clear that we're expected to increase council tax by the maximum of 3.99%. 2% of this is the adult social care precept. The remaining 1.99% is to help fund all the other inflationary costs and demand increases that we face. A 1.99% increase raises £1.1 million for the council, a significant sum. For the majority of our taxpayers, it's an extra 38 pence a week. 8 pence a week if you're eligible for council tax reduction scheme. Is a council tax rise my preferred choice? No. Do I think, after all Knowsley's been through, additional financial burden should be placed on our residents? No. This is no way to fund adult social care. Residents struggling to make ends meet, being asked to pay more because this Tory government chooses to abdicate its responsibility by failing to fund adult social care properly from national taxation. They should be ashamed of themselves. But unfortunately, this Tory government feels no shame. They've simply decided that this is how local government services will be funded. I'll always argue as strongly as anyone that Knowsley people deserve more government support. But because of the Tories' perverse methods, our argument is massively weakened if we don't raise what we're expected to generate locally. They'll simply say, you don't raise your council tax, you can't be asking us for any more money. Is this approach fair? No. But we've come to expect nothing less from this heartless government. When setting the level of council tax, we must of course recognise that there is such a thing as inflation. Add to that rising demands on our services, and you're left with rising costs year on year. Council tax is currently our only guaranteed source of permanent funding, the only funding that we can rely on. Madam Mayor, I'd like to return to how we've arrived at a position where we can now invest in our services again. When faced with the government funding cuts, we had a choice. We could manage decline, or we could come out fighting. As always, we chose to fight. This council has taken bold decisions. We've supported development and house building to increase our council tax base and our population. We've welcomed business growth, not just new companies, but expanding existing local businesses, which in turn has created extra business rates, income and new jobs. Wherever possible, we're making sure those jobs go to Knowsley people. We've made difficult and yes, sometimes unpopular decisions, but that's what leadership is all about. £100 million of service cuts identified and implemented. We've had to lose 1,500 staff, almost all through voluntary means. In essence, we've had to do more with less. We've embraced Knowsley better together, and we're working closer than ever with our partners and our communities. But despite this challenging backdrop, let's just take a minute to think about the major projects that we're already delivering in all corners of the borough. a Shakespearean playhouse in Prescott, a whole new town centre in Kirkby, a garden village in Country Park in Hullsneed, an exciting housing development in East Hale Wood, and ambitious plans for the regeneration of Highton Village Centre. And that's all before we get to the investment package that I'm able to announce tonight. Madam Mayor, as I said earlier, we're proposing to include £12 million of permanent investment in service budgets to deal with growth, extra demand and inflationary costs. On top of that, the Labour Group's resolution proposes a further £14.5 million of investment in key areas. And our Cabinet has already announced our investment themes: protecting vulnerable residents, tackling the climate change emergency, improving the borough's environment, delivering vibrant town centres, driving the borough's inclusive growth, and sustaining and transforming key services. Tonight, our Labour Group resolution puts forward an exciting set of investment proposals, which impacts across all council services and every ward in the borough. We will protect our most vulnerable residents through additional investment of £2.7 million, including extra money for special educational needs and disabilities provision, the youth offending service, the fostering support and shared lives. Investment to continue our emergency support scheme, providing a safety net for those residents in crisis. £250,000 to provide a community hub and adult social care provision on the site of the former National Wildflower Centre at Courtay Park. We declared a climate change emergency at the last council meeting, and we were clear that this wasn't just gesture politics. Tonight, we're putting our money where our mouth is. Investment of almost £2 million will include a new dedicated team to push forward our climate change action plan. The planting of over 3,400 trees across the borough will start this month, and £500,000 will be invested in bringing forward the replacement of all our street lighting with lower energy LED bulbs. We're rightly proud of the borough's environment and the way it looks and feels. Our budget proposes a further £2 million worth of investment in key areas, including highways and footpath maintenance, dealing with flooding issues and improvements to neighbourhood shopping parades. Replacement play equipment in parks and investment in fly tipping and environmental enforcement will also be funded, together with the establishment of a £500,000 fund to tackle the environmental improvements across the borough. You can't fail to have noticed this council's commitment to creating vibrant town centres. Only last December we bought Kirkby Town Centre, and a week in we'd started building the new shops, including Morrison's supermarket. Prescott is unrecognisable, with new cafes, bars, shops and restaurants opening at a rate of one a month, and the Shakespeare North Playhouse starting to come out of the ground. Our budget proposes almost £3.5 million to do even more. £3.2 million Land Assembly Fund to support the ambitious plans to regenerate Highton Village Centre. The establishment of a shop local event programme across all of our town centres, and investment to allow the Kirkby market rents to be reduced to competitive levels. This Labour Council is committed to making sure that all residents benefit from economic growth across the borough. To this end, we'll invest over £2.1 million in inclusive growth, additional investment in business grants to create more jobs, £750,000 to match fund for ways to work so that Knowsley residents have the best chances of getting the jobs that are being created, £200,000 to fund improvements to public transport, funding towards the events and legacy programme of Knowsley's Borough of Culture Year in 2022, and investment in creating new green public space in Hullsneed Garden Village development before anything else is built. Our budget also proposes £2.1 million to help transform and sustain the council's key services. which includes investment to ensure that valued youth services and leisure facilities continue to be fully delivered in 2020-2021. An investment in state-of-the-art technology to modernise and improve services to residents and service users. Pushing forward with our Knowsley Better Together approach, we're proposing £250,000 community empowerment fund to support our brilliant community and voluntary organisations to help improve the lives of Knowsley residents. Next week, the Chancellor of the Exchequer will set out the government's budget, assuming, of course, the current one doesn't walk out as well. I hope he takes the same approach as we are, in investing in key areas that will make life better for people. I'm sure none of us in the Labour group are holding our breath. If recent media reports are to be believed, it looks like the Tory policy of stealing from the poor to give to the rich is alive and well. Don't be surprised if austerity is only really over for the people who live in the leafy suburbs and leafy shires. So what about the future? Our financial position in 2021-22 onwards is very hard to predict, not least because we have an unpredictable government and a very unpredictable Prime Minister. That again is assuming that he's actually in charge. The forecasts assume that the government will keep to its word that austerity is over, and the new fair funding allocation model does what it says on the tin and doesn't turn out to be an unfair funding model. Again, recent media reports suggest that we could well be disappointed. But we can't stand still. Madam Mayor, the easiest thing to do would be to take a wait-and-see approach. If we'd done that over the last 10 years, we would never have gotten anything done. Our residents expect us to continue to improve the borough and the services we provide to them and local businesses. We will just have to deal with whatever the government throws at us when it happens, like we have done for the past 10 years. Madam Mayor, it's as a result of this Council's proactive approach to inclusive economic growth, new houses, new businesses and new jobs, alongside our responsible long-term approach to financial management and our ability to make difficult decisions and implement them, that we find ourselves in this enviable position. Leadership is so much more than coming up with something that might look good in a leaflet or in a tweet. Easy to do when you know you will never actually have to achieve it. Madam Mayor, I hope all members can come together to agree an investment budget which improves services, facilities and the environment across our borough, as well as continuing the responsible long-term approach that has served us so well over these challenging years. A budget that protects the most vulnerable in our borough, a budget which says to our community, you can rely on Knowsley Council, or more to the point, Madam Mayor, you can rely on this Labour Council to invest in the services that I know the residents of Knowsley care so much about. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Can I accept the Executive Director of Resource if there are any issues to bring to the members' attention, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have had full opportunity to go through the proposals and I can confirm that they're robust and deliverable and can be voted on by members tonight. I would just point out to members the revised medium-term financial forecasts resulting from the proposed investments, which show a forecast surplus of 551,000 in 21-22 and a deficit of 1.159 million in 2022-23. As the report explains, though, these estimates are subject to significant uncertainty given the upcoming changes to local government funding. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. Councillor Graham Morgan, do you wish to speak on this motion?
Can I reserve the right to speak later on, Madam Mayor?
Thank you. Are there any other members who wish to speak on this motion? Councillor Carl Cashman, I understand you wish to move an amendment to this.
Yes, please, Madam Mayor.
Can I second the amendment, Madam Mayor?
Thank you. I call Cashman to speak on the next purpose of it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to propose our amendments to this year's budget with some key changes and important additions to those included in the Labour Group budget. It's also my pleasure to be able to represent the views of local people in this council chamber. It's important that those views are considered properly and not just tossed aside as they have been in the past. One of the biggest talking points when speaking to local residents has been the increase in council tax at a time when the council is running at a budget surplus. For years, local residents have had the burden of constant council tax increases thrust upon them, and we've long said that the council cannot simply keep passing this burden on to local residents. Increasing their council tax year on year by the maximum amount possible is just not acceptable or sustainable for those who are the poorest in this borough. The average property's council tax has increased by almost 20% since 2015. Again, this is not sustainable. With this in mind, Madam Mayor, our budget amendment takes out the inflationary increase in council tax. And this is because we've listened to local residents who have told us they find it outrageous that this council continues to increase council tax by such a substantial amount. Madam Mayor, I wanted to tackle some of the major changes that we are proposing and explaining our additional investments. First of all, we'll be allocating £2 million from capital receipts to the Land Assembly Fund with a view to increasing that figure next year. It is our view that £2 million will be sufficient for year one with an aim to review this in year two. We will remove £545,000 allocated to Halsmead Garden Village. The principle behind this being that we disagree with this land being used for housing developments. This fund will essentially be saying to developers, you can remove a massive amount of green space from our area and replace it with a bit of astroturf. That's not acceptable. We'll remove the business growth grant of £100,000 only for this year until we have a clearer picture of why the council is lending to restaurateurs who don't pay their business rates. This council needs to get a grip on who it's giving money to before it starts giving more money to the business mates who forgot to pay the bill. Something else we'll look more closely at in the future, Madam Mayor, are the changes to our social care in this budget. We believe that we should, at the very least, freeze the charges with a view to dropping them for the most vulnerable residents in the future. We would do this once we have a clearer picture again of what the government's settlements will be for the borough and how the economy will look after we leave the regulatory agreements with the European Union. With all that said, Madam Mayor, it is welcome news, and I do congratulate the council on being in a position where we can make investments in the borough in this year's budget. We will use this to deliver one of our key promises, first of all, for the improvement of our town centres. We'll deliver free town centre car parking, allowing us to bring people into our town centres and get local businesses thriving again. This is not just a pledge that comes from our political group, Madam Mayor, but rather a pledge that local businesses have asked us to include in this budget year on year. As Liberals, we believe that residents should be central to the investment agenda and should be key in the decision-making process. That's why we've suggested a community improvement fund of £500,000, which will be split evenly between the 15 wards in the borough. This fund will be available for councillors, local residents and local community groups to make bids for projects that will help to tackle climate change and also improve their communities. Allowing these residents to make these decisions shows that we trust them to know what is important in their local community. This will allow innovative environmental ideas that the council might not have otherwise had, and also allow local residents the opportunity to show to show that they know a little something that the council might not know. It will also allow the council to show that it will work collaboratively and listen to local people. On the issue of improving the borough's environment, we will fully support the investment in fly tipping enforcement, something that continues to be a major issue in our local communities. We will also enhance the borough's cleanliness by bringing in weekly residual waste collections for multi-occupancy flats with large communal bins. We've been told by residents living in these local areas that people who don't live in their flats are dumping waste, leaving bins full only days after being emptied. In flats such as Beaconsfield and Prescott, this has been a major problem for residents living there, and these residents are in need of a weekly collection for these communal bins. We will also, Madam Mayor, introduce a behaviour change programme for recycling, helping both improve the local environment and tackle climate change by reducing single-use plastics and also educating local people on items that should and could be recycled. Our hope is that this will ultimately reduce the overflow in maroon bins and help to improve the borough's recycling levels, again empowering residents to do their bit to tackle climate change. On the subject of tackling climate change, Madam Mayor, we will work within the defined objectives of the recent notice of motion passed by the Council and commit to protecting our parks and green spaces. We'll also enhance this, showing some real action and intent by introducing a £1.7 million fund to help local town councils take over the ownership of their local parks. This will essentially pass down the decision-making process to the lowest possible level, allowing local residents to have a real say in what happens to their parks. What we cannot allow, Madam Mayor, is a situation that we ended up in 2 years ago, where we had a Labour council that was going to allow development and house building on our parks. You should all be ashamed of yourselves. To guarantee that parks cannot be developed in the future, we will ensure that each park has a covenant preventing any change of use for building or selling off any part of it to developers. This fund will assist town councils with the maintenance of parks until such a point that they can manage the maintenance themselves. In summary, Madam Mayor, our budget amendment aligns with the key investment themes as set out, improving them and enhancing the commitments made by this council in the notices of motion, and I would urge all members of the council to support this amendment and to put some really important additional investments that we have suggested into place. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Can I ask the Executive Director of Resources if there are any issues to draw the members' attention to, please?
Again, thank you, Madam Mayor. I have had the opportunity to discuss and go through the proposals, and I can confirm they are robust and deliverable and can be voted on by members tonight. Again, I would just point out to members, though, the revised medium-term financial forecasts resulting from the proposed amendment, which in this case show a forecast deficit starting in 21-22 of 762,000 and a further deficit of 2.517 million in 2022-23. Again, these estimates are subject to significant uncertainty given the upcoming changes to local government funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Smith, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. What I would just like to say is that, you know, watching some of the faces opposite while Councillor Cashman was delivering his speech was really good for my heart, you know. Seeing some of them there gasp, Councillor Aston, with horror at the thought of town and parish councils being a fund being provided for town and parish councils to secure the leaseholds of the parks in their area. Oh dear, you know, what an outrage. So I fully support, obviously, what Councillor Cashman has said, and would certainly, you know, make Labour councillors think, certainly those who are dual-hatted, as it were, on town councils and parish councils throughout the borough, just what an opportunity that this provides Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Colleagues, I am aware that the majority of members will not have had an opportunity to consider this amendment as it is only just being circulated. I am therefore going to adjourn this meeting for 20 minutes to give the members their opportunity to fully consider the amended before it is debated on further and voted upon. Thank you.
Please be upstanding for the Mayor. Councillors, chief officers, ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding to receive the Worshipful, the Mayor of Knowsley, Councillor Jackie Harris.
Thank you, colleagues. Be seated.
After the adjournment, may I ask if any of the members wish to speak at all? Councillor Donnelly, right, okay, we'll take them in order. Councillor Donnelly first, go on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Wow. Looking at the proposals on the table, the Lib Dems have finally took that splinter out and got off the fence. But I'm struggling to understand why the Lib Dems have not gave any concern, any process about the most vulnerable people in our borough. Whereas Labour have committed to improving our choice and independence for people, the Lib Dems seem determined to take that away. So, what are the Lib Dems recommending? The community network homes, which allow people with learning disabilities to enjoy living in their chosen communities, the Lib Dems want to take that away. The travel team that will provide travel training for our young people to support independence, the Lib Dems want to take that away. The family group conference coordinator to help children and young people to remain at home, the Lib Dems want to take that away. The family first manager to support the delivery of quality service children for children and young people, the Lib Dems want to take that away. And that's just to name a few on protecting vulnerable adults and children. The Labour Party remain the party who deliver for the residents who need the most support in this borough. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Byron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is typical of the Lib Dems. They have a cheek to attack Knowsley over council tax increases. Yet, back at the Town Council, Prescott Town Council are proposing an 11% increase in their precept. Despite the tax base being increased by 6% this year, because the increase of house building in Knowsley can be facilitated. My understanding is that this increase will also mean that Prescott Town Council have 150,000 in their bank while they're making this increase. Prescott Town Council have come here to Knowsley in the past with the begging bowl, and we've had to bail them out. We will take no lessons on financial prudence from the Lib Dems.
Councillor Byron, Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Chair. Just in terms of addressing Councillor Cashman's comments there, if I'm reading your amendment correctly, you're not proposing, are you, to have a business growth grants programme a programme that supports job creation, business sustainability and growth. Effectively, by cancelling this, you are sending a message out to our business community that we're not interested in them. Hardly a great message. We are striving to encourage private sector investment and to build confidence. This is only all the more unbelievable when you factor in that many of our businesses that would potentially benefit from such a programme are located in Knowsley Business Park South. Knowsley Business Park South, which forms part of your only ward in the borough. That's what I call acting in the interest of your constituents. I see you've also adopted not to deliver the delivery of the council growth agenda, an agenda that helps to ensure the financial viability of the council in the longer term. An agenda that creates jobs, provides residents with improved housing choices and reduces dependency. Unbelievable. That said, I guess that I shouldn't be surprised by this, as your party seems to be the only one that is against most of the planning applications that come forward. I note that you're proposing not to support the early delivery of the public realm and green spaces that will be at the heart of the Knowsley Garden Village. In doing so, you're denying the residents of Wiston and the wider area early access to a space that has been inaccessible to them for decades. And for why? For why? This proposal doesn't even save you money, as it's an investment that will be repaid in full. Moving on to our town centres. I see that your plan is to scrap car parking charges, a move which can only undermine our climate change agenda, as it will encourage car usage. Hardly forward thinking, I would say. Just as progress is being made in Highton Town Centre, your proposal is to pull the rug from under it and limit the amount of funding available. I note you've taken 1.2 million out of Highton but left Prescott untouched. Is this a coincidence, I wonder? I'm guessing not. But simply, I call your proposal a budget for the few, not the many, and a budget that laughs in the face of inclusive growth and the needs of our community. Shame on you. Colleagues, I call on you not to support this amendment.
Councillor Brennan. Councillor Shelley Powell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Colleagues, I think that this budget proposal exposes the Lib Dems for exactly what they are: ill-informed, narrow-minded and parochial. They have taken our targeted Environmental Improvement Fund and simply changed its name to Community Improvement Fund. But instead of using an evidence-based approach, they want to spend it equally on each ward. This smacks of parochialism to me. Madam Mayor, not only are the Lib Dems proposing to cut our town centre investments, they also want to limit what we propose to invest in the shopping parades serving our local communities. Councillor Cashman, just so I get this straight, you want us to hand over our parks to town councils, yet you want us to waste 1.7 million for handing them over. Have you not read our climate emergency declaration? Because you should have, because you voted for it.
Yeah.
Our declaration made it clear that this Labour-run council is protecting our designated parks from development forever. I would also remind you that you're here as a borough councillor, not a town councillor.
Not a town councillor.
Furthermore, I note you suggest taking £50,000 from the renewal of our parks play equipment for our children in favour of investment in just town council parks. Again, parochial town council behaviour, Councillor Cashman. I suggest, colleagues, that you take this ill-informed, narrow-minded and parochial amendment, vote it down and throw it where it belongs, in the recycling bin. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shelley. Can we ask Councillor Deed, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As a councillor and representative of the people of Highton, I'm both surprised and disappointed with the alternate budget proposal by the Lib Dems in Appendix A. A number of years ago, the council, with the support from councillors from every township, Kirby, Halewood, Wiston and Cronton and Highton, took the decision to develop the master plan for Prescott. This was the right decision and has been a catalyst for positive change and prosperity. The Labour councillors, through the budget process, are now proposing to invest £3.2 million in Highton to replicate the successes of Prescott. As a Highton Labour councillor, our residents deserve a town centre fit for purpose, and this Labour budget enables the master plan for change. The Lib Dem proposals is an attempt to hinder the progression of the town centre for our Highton residents, which I personally feel is a disgrace.
Councillor Lilly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's just, I think Colin's just said everything that I wanted to say. As a Highton councillor, you know, every resident in this borough deserves to have a thriving town centre, and it's a drop in the ocean that's being invested in Highton compared to the rest of the borough, especially Prescott. Just touching on the bins as well, what Councillor Cashman raised, I think I do believe that our residents are quite informed of what they can and can't put in the recycling, and I believe that 90% of household waste is recyclable, and that's why the grey bins are placed. So to say that they're not educated in that is a bit of an insult. Well, you said that they needed educating further on it. I think that they do now. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Lilly. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wasn't going to comment on this, to be fair. We've got our own resolution, but I just wanted to clarify a few points. Firstly, a reference keeps being made to Councillor Cashman and Prescott Town Council. Councillor Cashman's not been on Prescott Town Council since 2015. Secondly, reference was made by Councillor Byron regarding the precept that Prescott Town Council have raised. As I'm sure the members will be aware, a few years ago, this Labour-run council decided we don't want to pay for the parks in Prescott, so we're not going to maintain them, we're not going to put the grass, we're not going to litter pick them. Prescott Town Council naturally picked up the bill, and we still are picking up the bill. Them costs have went up every single year, and naturally precepts have had to increase to match them. One thing that I can say is if we had a £4 million surplus, there would be absolutely no precept increases at all. To move on to another point, we mentioned that in the climate resolution that the parks are safe, parks definitely safe. In 2017, I'm sure you know, on 28th of November, the Cabinet voted to approve the plan to move 10% of the parks into a trust to develop them. A number of those people are still on that Cabinet, so forgive me for not being too reassured by a few pieces of paper since then. One of the concerns about the investments that have been laid out is not where they're going, because I actually support, in general, most of them. It's the lack of transparency and detail behind the investments. So, for instance, somebody mentioned the Highton Town Centre investments, which, by the way, I fully support. I think the investment for Prescott Town Council has been fantastic, and I do hope that it can be replicated in Highton. But if we look at that, that's £3.2 million worth of investment, and the commitment and the justification behind it in this report is just 2 sentences long. So theoretically, we approve the list of investments here. It'll never come back to full council for further detail or transparency. It'll never come back for debate on the finer details. In fact, the best that we'll get is it might be signed off by a cabinet member in consultation with an officer. Now, I was critical about the last leadership of the council. I think anyone will agree with that. But you know what? They were getting the basics right. Given the catalogue of mistakes and blunders regarding this council and particularly the financial direction of the cabinet, including 2 news stories already this week, and we're only on Wednesday, I wouldn't trust this cabinet to run a PTA, never mind a council.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, you can recall at the last full council, I stood at the lectern as a representative of this council on the Air Quality Task Force down at the Liverpool City region. And in part of my statement, it went on to say that this council will reduce carbon emissions and NOx levels by 2030. Councillor Cashman had said before earlier that he wants free car parking. Now, the whole idea is to stop people using the cars and use better modes of transport. This in itself then flies in the face of the Green Party and their agenda with regards to climate emergency. So basically what Councillor Cashman is saying is nonsensical. It just doesn't make sense and clashes with his opponents on the front bench agenda. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Councillor Kearns.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 2 years on the run now, the Lib Dems have decided that they're going to take money out of Highton. It wasn't until they had Labour councillors up in Prescott that they started to get the investment, and especially the Shakespeare Centre, because it was a Labour councillor that actually brought that forward. But we've got them now wanting to take 1.7 million out of our budget and then ask us to give them 1.7 million to buy the parks or to run the parks, and that's going to last, what, 2 years, and then it'll fall back. I mean, we've just heard the Greens talk about the costs of running the parks. It'll fall back on the town councils to actually do the work and employ the people to maintain the things, which not all of them.
Can we have one speaker, please?
Yeah, it's all right. I can sing and dance to Barracan. Makes no difference to me. But in essence, what we're doing in the town centres is actually investing for the future. We're actually we're going to get the rates from it, we're going to get employment from it, we're going to get things that will benefit our constituents, which is why they put us in this place. When we're talking in terms of town councils, the Lib Dems virtually bankrupted the town council they're running, and now they put proposals forward that will, in essence, in the future, do the same thing again. It's the Liberal Democrats government, when they were in government, that actually put the strain on this council by the reduction in the grants. We suffered because the Lib Dems and the Conservatives stopped giving us the entitled grants that we should have had, and it come through the Lib Dem party. So what they do, their fiscal, I better not say it. You're thinking about fiscal, I think you need a little bit more training on how the pound works. That in essence is where you should be. And so what I'm saying to my colleagues, you know exactly what this resolution means, and you know what it means to the constituents and the future of investment in this borough. Vote it down. It's no good for the borough and no good for the constituents. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Is there anybody else that wishes to speak who hasn't spoken?
I'd just like to ask Councillor Cashman what he has actually got against Highton, because this isn't the first time when he's gone against a proposal for Highton Town Centre, and as a representative of the people and the communities of Highton, I'd like to know where his objection is to the money being invested in Highton, as Prescott have done pretty well and we've supported Prescott.
Thank you. Can I ask, we've got now, Councillor Morgan wishes to speak. Can't come back on that question, obviously, because you've had your speech, Councillor Cashman. Councillor Morgan, do you wish to speak now? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Colleagues, I'm really angry at the moment. I think what the Liberal Democrats are suggesting is really quite scandalous here tonight. This council has had to struggle for the last 10 years to cope with the cuts by successive Tory governments, supported and started by the Liberal Democrats who propped up the Tories when the cuts were at their most severe. But we survived. And now, thanks to how effectively we have managed things, we finally have a huge opportunity to invest in our services and start to repair the damage that has been done over the last decade. But the Liberal Democrats want to oppose all that. Just look at what they want. They are saying that we shouldn't invest in. They are saying that we shouldn't invest in Central Primary School, a school we should be proud of and which serves the children in Knowsley who need our help the most. They should be ashamed, colleagues. They are saying that we shouldn't invest in our inclusive growth agenda. It is the growth in jobs and businesses which underpins the strong financial position we have heard here tonight. This has become, which has now become the envy of Merseyside, but the Lib Dems don't want it. And if you can go back to Councillor Cashman's speech, he didn't actually mention, maybe because he was embarrassed or he just thought it was going to slip through, but we noticed it. He wanted to take £1.2 million out of the investment in Highton Town Centre. He wanted to take the money away from the investment we want to make in Highton, investment that will see the regeneration and transformation of Highton Village Centre. My colleagues have already said, we bent over backwards and we supported the regeneration of Prescott. An awful lot of time and money has gone in, and look at the fruits of the labour now. What a fantastic, vibrant centre, with Shakespeare the North going to be the icing on the cake. And this is what we get back. No investment in Highton Town Centre. That's right, colleagues, they opposed the investment in Highton just like they opposed everything that we're doing, like we did to transform Prescott. Can you imagine our town centres would have been what they would have been like if they were in charge? Once again, it's all about leaflets. It's certainly not about leadership. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Councillor Ashton, as the mover of the original motion, has the right now to reply before the amendment is voted on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before I go into the substantive response that I'd like to make, I'd just like to pick up on a couple of points that Councillor Cashman raised and Councillor Taylor. Councillor Cashman congratulated the Council on the position that we find ourselves in. Well, all I can say after the amendments I've seen tonight from the Lib Dems, thank God he hasn't been in power all these years, because I don't know what we would have done in the last 10 years if we'd have been subjected to the Lib Dem ideas. Blows your mind. Councillor Smith said I gasped before. I've got a bit of a cold, but I didn't gasp. It was a bit of a laugh, to be honest, because of the cheek of the Lib Dems to ask us to hand over the parks for them to look after and pay them £1.7 million to do it. The last time I remember the Lib Dems being in control of anything that looked like an asset, it fell to bits.
Yes.
Remember, in Prescott, it was derelict after they'd finished with it. And now they want to take over our parks and run them. You couldn't run the proverbial, to be honest with you, but anyway.
Councillor, just a minute. Colleagues, we've all had our speaks. We've all been allowed to speak as and when you've requested. Can I now ask you?
Madam Mayor, sorry, can I ask Councillor Smith to retract that? I think that's an absolute disgraceful statement he's just made there. And I'd ask him to apologise to Councillor Ashton on the comments he's just made.
Councillor Smith, I ask you to apologise, please.
What I would say, Madam Mayor...
No, I asked you one question, Councillor Smith, please. Would you apologise on what your comments you have just made to Councillor Ashton while she's speaking?
This council made a better job on Prescott Leisure Centre than the Luftwaffe could
Councillor
have ever
Smith,
done.
I am not
No,
asking
I will
about
not
that.
apologise.
Right, okay.
Madam Mayor, it's fine. It's on the record. That's fine. It's recorded. His residents can see how he treats the council. Disgraceful. Final comment before I just go on to a few other points. Councillor Cashman referred to our council tax increase as being outrageous. and he talked about it being over a number of years. I think you mentioned the 20% increase that it's gone up in the last few. 57% increase, colleagues. 57% for Prescott for their precept. That's what's outrageous over the last few years. That's, you've all been in control for the last few years, and that's what it's gone up by. 57. God knows what it's going to have to go up to when they take control of all the parks, because it's going to be an incredible amount that they're going to have to raise. Anyway, Madam Mayor, this amendment is not unexpected. It's worrying, but it's not unexpected. I have to say, I set out my earlier budget speech why we have to increase the council tax. I wish we didn't have to, but we do. It's our only source of permanent funding. The government works out our grant funding assuming we have increased it by the maximum. I don't agree with the government. Local taxpayers should not be footing the bill. We have to work with the funding system that we have. We have to protect our residents and the services they depend on. 2% is for adult social care, and it appears all parties thankfully agree that we have no choice but to agree that decision. So that leaves us with 1.99% general increase. That increase pays towards all the other inflationary costs and demand increases that we face. We need that increase just to stay afloat. For the majority of our taxpayers, it's an extra 38 pence a week. 8 pence a week if they're eligible for council tax reduction scheme. This raises £1.1 million annually for the council on a permanent basis. We would have £1.1 million less to spend in every future year if we don't apply the increase. The future year's figures show it clearly. The Lib Dem proposal will put us into deficit in 2021-22 and nearly doubles the deficit in 2022-23. For the sake of a cheap headline, they want to condemn us overnight to 2 years of further cuts. That's irresponsible. Though good financial management and bold decision making, we have managed to get our heads above water for the first time in a decade. Despite a tidal wave of uncertainty coming our way next year, the Lib Dems want to take us back under. Other members have already picked up the selfishness of the investment changes they're proposing. The Lib Dems should be reminded they're here as Borough Council members, not as a delegation from Prescott Town Council. The Labour budget proposals set out a budget covering all services and all areas of the borough. It does it in a sustainable, inclusive and a responsible way. This Lib Dem amendment tries to undo this. It takes no account of the problems it brings in future years. It's simply a leaflet generator. And on that basis, Madam Mayor, I'd urge my colleagues to reject the amendment.
I will now put the amendment as proposed by Councillor Carl Cashman to the vote. All those in favour of the amendment? Thank you. All those against the amendment? Thank you. Would anybody like to abstain? Thank you. That amendment has been lost. I will now return to the original motion and proposal by Councillor Aston. Are there any further comments or questions from members who have not, I repeat, not already spoken on the original matter? Councillor Kai Taylor, I understand you wish to move an amendment to the motion set out in the favour of the order of favours.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll to move the amendment as set out.
Second. You don't stand when you address the mayor.
Sorry.
Apologies, Madam Mayor, there was an interruption.
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
That's how you do it. Well done.
Can I just go through? So the agenda, please.
Madam, it's customary for one to stand when addressing the first citizen of this borough, the Mayor. Can I remind Councillor to please honour that?
Thank you, Councillor Councillor Kye-Taylor, I understand I will start again on this. I wish you want to move an amendment to this motion and set out the order of the papers. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move that amendment as laid out in the order papers.
Thank you. Councillor Joanne Burke.
Can I second that amendment, please, Madam Mayor?
Thank you. Councillor Kye-Taylor, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, just to clarify a few points. To start off with, between the years of 2011 to 2018, Prescott Town Council was controlled by the Labour Party, just a gentle little reminder. And secondly, in response to Councillor Ashton's demands for money from Prescott and Whiston Town Council, no, it would be the short answer to that, but if she'd like to put her demands into a letter, as the Chair of the Finance Committee, I would take great pleasure in responding to that letter. Moving on to the amendment, first of all, I'd like to thank the Borough Treasurer and his team for the support and assistance that has been offered to all groups within the Council during this budget period. Given that 3 groups have all submitted budget proposals, I think we can appreciate just how busy the officers must have been. Secondly, I'd like to welcome the positive financial situation that the Council finds itself in this year. After 10 years of austerity, let's be clear that there is no meat left on the bone. Services have been cut to bare minimum, and efforts have been taken by all councils to ensure services are at their most efficient levels. The Council has been lucky this year. After 10 years of brutal cuts, central government appears to have given us a small respite. Since 2010, Knowsley residents have been asked to dig deep in their own pockets and help the Council make up the shortfall to ensure essential services can continue to function and to guarantee the most vulnerable in our society are protected. In some circumstances, council tax increases are unavoidable, and as elected members, we are often tasked with making difficult decisions to ensure the Council remains financially able to deliver on statutory services. As a group, we are always prepared to back an appropriate council tax figure should it be absolutely necessary, but we must bear in mind that our residents are struggling. Costs are going up year on year and the government is doing very little to help them. Given the positive financial situation this year, the Green Group feel unable to support an additional council tax increase that far exceeds the rate of inflation. We simply cannot pass another burden onto our residents with clear conscience. I understand that opportunities to invest have not been often in the last decade, but colleagues, I feel like we must exercise caution as we carefully consider each possible investment. I remain concerned that this period of economic prosperity could simply be the calm before the storm, and believe strongly that our funding investments should be given far more consideration, as it is possible it could be 10 years until we are in this position again. The key reasons for the 4.010 million surplus position are the following savings and additional fundings: 5.7 million permanent savings negotiated on the local government pension contributions, £4 million annual benefits from Knowsley's involvement in the business retention rate. A local government grant settlements were far better than expected. In particular, the council received 4.9 million extra for adult social care, and the council tax increase of 1.4 million, which was achieved through the additional council houses. Quite a small figure in the grand scheme of things. Previous years' funding gaps have been dealt with through permanent savings. This does not mean that we are in the clear financially. I also doubt that this signals a significant change in government policy, and I do not expect that we will receive any further support from the government. In fact, a recent report by the Local Government Association has suggested that changes to how councils are funded would see Knowsley lose £11 million, or 20% of its government grant, as resources are transferred from deprived boroughs like Knowsley to more affluent shire councils. I must point out that the majority group have only shared the investment proposals with opposition councillors on Monday, giving us just 2 days to research, scrutinise and examine the proposals in depth. Furthermore, members of the public, the tax-paying residents, have been kept totally in the dark regarding these proposals, and no efforts have been made to engage with members of the public to ask them how they think their money should be spent. This is why we're calling on the council to ensure that we make this funding count, as it might be our only chance to invest in such great amount. We think it's our duty as representatives of the people of Knowsley to go back to them with a public consultation and give them a real say in what the council's investment priorities should be. We've asked officers for the recommendations, and the majority group have accepted every single suggestion that they tabled. But surely it's just as important to listen to a pensioner from Dingwall Drive who's living off of poor quality of pavements, or a struggling parent from Prescott who's concerned about their child's education, or a new business looking to set up in the heart of Kirby. We should look to these people for suggestions for how their town centre and the borough can be improved. I don't believe that there's a monopoly on wisdom, and I think a public consultation would not only prove to residents that the council is willing to listen to them, but would also benefit the process by providing suggestions that council officers and councillors may have missed. Our resolution proposes a council tax increase of 2%, which would allow for the adult social care precept. Our resolution also incorporates the Labour Group proposals that have to be implemented from the 1st of April 2020 in order to enable continuation of existing services and statutory requirements. These total 3.099 million. The remaining unallocated funding of 10.277 million will be reserved pending a public consultation. The key elements of this public consultation would be that it would last for approximately 6 weeks. It would be carried out through a mixture of website, social media and public meetings, one meeting per area liaison area. The focus will be on one-off investment, and members of the public will be asked what their investment priorities will be. During this proposal, we've also shared a list of recommendations by officers, Labour groups and Liberal Democrat groups to allow for public comment. Following officer analysis of the public comments and priorities, full council could then consider the proposals and public feedback, making a decision of the allocation of the remaining 10.277 million at the first available council meeting following the AGM in May 2020. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Can I ask the Executive Director of Resources if there are any issues to draw to a member's attention?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have had an opportunity to discuss and go through the proposals, and I can confirm they are robust and deliverable and can be voted on by members tonight. I would just point out to members again the revised medium-term financial forecasts resulting from the proposed Green Party amendment, which in this case show a forecast surplus of 406,000 in 2021-22 and a deficit of 1.349 million in 22-23. These forecasts could change, however, depending on what further investments are proposed following the public consultation exercise. I would be able to comment further at a future meeting when the full proposals are put forward. Again, these estimates are subject to significant uncertainty given the upcoming changes to local government funding. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Joanne Bay may speak if you wish to.
I'd like to reserve my right to speak at the end, if that's okay, please, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Colleagues, I am aware that this amendment has also only just been circulated this evening. Do members need a further adjournment? Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Given that there isn't much substance to the amendment, I don't think we need an adjournment. Thank you.
Thank you. There will be no adjournment and we will continue with the debate. Are there any other members who haven't already spoken on the amendment who would like to speak? Councillor Brennan, Councillor Brown. Councillor Brown first.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Aston, for outlining the Labour Group's overall budget proposal. Thank you.
Well, have you spoke? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is typical. Like the Lib Dems, the Greens put something forward to attack the Labour councillors. When we see, whilst doing this, Whiston Town Council, which is solely controlled by the Greens, are proposing an increase of 20% in their tax base. So I believe. This is the 10th time you've interrupted people. I will ask the Mayor. You argued the other week about people heckling you, and you've done it more than anybody else tonight.
Can we have one speaker, please? I name the speaker, you speak. Can we have respect for that person, please? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll get back to my speech. Whiston Town Council are putting forward a precept of 20%, so I believe. This is at the same time when they have 300,000 in their coffers. This is staggering hypocrisy. They reckon that Americans do not understand the concept of irony. It appears that the Lib Dems and the Greens do not either.
Thank you. Anybody else who wishes to speak? Councillor Donnelly.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. It's great to see that the Greens have put an amendment forward this year, but just to also highlight what Councillor Taylor didn't highlight is from the operation budget We still haven't, as a local authority from the 1st of April, been given a grant for our public health funding. We need to spend our money on public health. We know what the crises are going on around, and delaying any decision in making improvements to our public health across Knowsley would be disastrous. I urge us to vote this amendment down again, as it doesn't consider our public health funding to be going straight from the 1st of April. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Donnelly. Councillor Morgan, just to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Colleagues, as I said earlier, after 10 years of Tory austerity, we have a chance to invest millions of pounds in services and communities. But instead of making these decisions tonight, the Green Party want to take some time to think about things. Never mind that we've already carried out extensive consultation on the Knowsley 2030 strategy, and never mind that we stood for election because we promised to represent the people. Asking the community for their views is obviously a good thing, and this council's got a good track record of doing that. I spoke earlier tonight about the wide-ranging consultation which has taken place over the last 18 months or so with the public, partners and stakeholders across the borough to develop the 2030 strategy. That's the strategy that we have just agreed. We specifically consulted the public on their priorities, including through our website, social media and face-to-face sessions in the borough. Every single one of us in the council chamber at some point decided that when we want to stand for election, we can show some leadership on behalf of our local communities. And that goes for all of us, regardless of our political views. We ask our communities to put their trust in us, and we tell them that we'll work hard to represent them. That includes finding out about the council and what it does, and finding out about the community's needs and what we can do to help them. We have the support of a range of highly professional and hard-working officers who are available to give us advice when we need it. And when we have done all the hard work, the time comes to make decisions. Those decisions, as we all know, are often difficult. They may involve making choices, but the good news is that we have done the hard work so we can make well-informed choices, and hopefully we can make the right choices. But the Green Party don't want that tonight. They want to get elected and take everything that goes with being a councillor without making a decision. It worries me that you think this is how to help the people who voted for you. You are meant to represent their best interest, not say that you don't know. You are meant to make decisions about doing the right thing, not saying that it's too difficult. You don't know if you want to spend anything to regenerate Huyton or any of our town centres. You don't know if you want to invest anything on inclusive growth, new jobs or businesses. And let me make this particularly clear. You don't know if you want to spend anything on improving the borough's environment. You don't even know if you want to invest on a new team to tackle the climate emergency. In fact, this isn't just as bad as half-baked ideas of the Liberal Democrats. It's actually worse. You clearly can't be bothered representing the people of Knowsley. There is nothing else here to debate tonight, colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Councillor Burke, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Having considered the suggested investments from both the Labour and Liberal Democrat group, I'm now even more confident that our resolution is the right way forward. There are proposals from both groups that are viable, positive investments for our borough, but I do feel strongly that we should not proceed without first asking members of the public across the borough what they believe our priorities should be. Doing this would demonstrate our acknowledgement and gratitude for the grit, resilience and determination they have shown. Moving forward in this way will allow us to reconvene at a future council meeting to consider a more comprehensive, collaborative list of proposed investments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Councillor Ashton, the original mover.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. to move on from the point that the leader made about consultation, this council is starting a massive consultation with the people of Kirby. I think it's tomorrow it starts. Asking them what kind of a town centre. Anyone can take part, businesses, residents, what kind of services, what kind of shops, what kind of leisure facilities they would like to see in their town centre. So to be accused of not listening or asking residents what they want is just wrong. But I do notice what we're going to be, what the Green Party are asking with their massive consultation. As the leader pointed out, they're asking people to comment on our proposals, officer proposals, Lib Dem proposals. Where's the Greens? That's what I'd be asking. If I'm a resident and I'm being faced with a massive big list of proposals to consider, I'd be saying to the Greens, well, where are yours? You're supposed to be showing leadership. That's not leadership. That's abdication of responsibility. How could you have the shame to go in front of your residents with a list of everybody else's proposals and none of your own? Beggars belief. Honestly, I just don't know how you can come up with such a half-baked idea. But see again?
Colleagues, please, I have asked twice now.
And he stood in this chamber, Madam Mayor, only a few months ago, saying everybody's got to be nice to each other and we've all got to treat each other in a nice way. And all he's done all night is interrupt and make cheap comments. I'll move on. Madam Mayor, I've already picked up on the pitfalls of not increasing the council tax. To repeat again, the point around the 1.99% increase. 96% of our council taxpayers would pay less than 57 pence a week extra. For the majority of our taxpayers who are in Band A, it will be 38 pence per week. For people who will struggle the most, the council tax reduction scheme will mean that the increase will be 8 pence per week. This extra income all adds up for the council. 1.99% increase raises 1.1% on a permanent basis, as I've already said tonight. That's 1.1% to protect key services. 1.1 million to invest in our borough. Investment gone forever under the Lib Dem and the Green Party proposals. Our costs, including levies, continue to rise due to inflation and extra demand. Foregoing this increase just gives us further problems in future years. We can't manage a budget effectively looking at a single year, but you can propose a budget on that basis if your aim is simply to fill a leaflet. And from this proposal tonight, it's clear that the Green Party priority is to chase the cheap headline. Madam Mayor, once again, I urge my colleagues to reject this amendment.
I will now put the amendment as proposed by Councillor Kai Taylor to the vote. All those in favour of the amendment? Thank you. All those against the amendment? Thank you. Would anybody like to abstain? One abstention, yeah. Thank you. That amendment has been lost. I will now return to the original motion as proposed by Councillor Ashton. Are there any further comments or questions from members who have not already spoken on the original matter? Councillor Donnelly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm really pleased that this Labour group has once again put in a position of commitment to much needed resources. Sorry, I'll start again. I'm really pleased that the Labour group again has been in a position to commit much needed resources to continue and sustain the transformation of key services for the benefit of our residents and those who are the most vulnerable, especially given significant cuts to this council that we've had to face. Just to highlight a few of our investments that we will fund 4 new information technology posts to meet the growing needs to support technology in order to deliver savings, efficiencies and support transformational change right across this council. We, the Labour Party, will continue to invest in key areas that will have a positive impact on improving outcomes of residents. Firstly, we will continue to invest more in the Knowsley Community Empowerment Fund, a fund to support the development of the growth of the third sector groups, community organisations with the aim of supporting residents and involving the community in service design, service delivery in line with Knowsley Best Together principles. We are supporting the transformation of adult provider services to enable it to support people to live as independently as possible and focus on those of greatest need. For children with special educational needs and disabilities, we are investing and understanding how the council can increase the capacity of support services locally and thereby reduce the need for children to go out of borough. We're also ensuring the quality of our materials in schools and the school environments are up to date for our most vulnerable people. In children's social care, we are managing the demand on services extremely well due to our well-established early out help offer. We want to do more for this and investing in our Family First team, ensuring the families get support early enough to stop problems escalating is our priority and is the key to our 3 financial year strategy. And finally, we are protecting the youth service and leisure services across this borough by providing additional financial support. So thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Cashman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just say I agree with the Green Party group on the lack of public consultation shown in the past by this council. It's got a staggeringly bad record on public consultation. So, Madam Mayor, I'd just like to reiterate at the end of this debate the point that I'm disappointed that the Labour group again think it's appropriate to raise council tax so substantially. I would also point out that the £500,000 that is going to be spent on the LED light bulbs would not have had to have been spent if the Labour group had the foresight a few years ago to put them LED light bulbs in when it took out that large PFI scheme. So we wouldn't have had to borrow more, potentially more, millions from private financiers. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cashman.
Councillor Shelley Powell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm delighted, and it's quite remarkable that we're able to be talking investment in the current financial climate. Equally, it's a testimony to the tough decisions that this Labour Council has already taken in dealing with the devastating condemnatory cuts over the past decade. It's wonderful that this investment enables us to further improve the quality of our parks and local environment. We're demonstrating leadership in tackling known rock spots whilst empowering residents to do more for themselves and each other to make a difference in their communities. However, we will continue to take tough and robust action against those who simply don't care about the quality of their environment. Finally, colleagues, I'm delighted to see our immediate investment in climate change so that we can take action now following our recent emergency declaration. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Howell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to say a few words really about the proposed investments as part of both the driving the inclusive growth and delivering vibrant town centres agenda. It's because of the hard work and the brave decisions and foresight of this council we find ourselves the envy of many when it comes to growth and the successes that we have seen. Building on this success, it is vital that we ensure our growth is inclusive. It benefits those that need most help and it supports our town centres. However, as we've already heard tonight from our Lib Dem colleagues, this doesn't seem to be a view shared by other parties. From the Labour Party's perspective, our proposed range of investments will provide opportunities for and support businesses to create much needed new jobs. We will also ensure that Knowsley Works are well placed to continue support residents with employability skills and to access and support people into employment. To put it bluntly, these two proposals alone will change people's lives and reduce dependency. In terms of public transport, for too long now, we've had an influence over what is provided in the borough, and we've been reliant on others to determine our public transport needs. Our planned investment will ensure that we fully understand our needs so that residents can access employment and leisure opportunities and become less dependent on cars. Not only will this enable us to actually demand a public transport offer that meets our needs, will be at the same time support our climate change agenda by deterring car use. In 2022, Knowsley is set to become the borough of culture. We all saw the great successes that the Lost Castles project had in galvanising communities and engaging residents. 2022 provides us with similar opportunities just on a wider scale, and is an opportunity for us to grow community cohesion and is one not to be missed. A planned investment will ensure that we maximise this opportunity. At Holsney Garden Village, our planned investments will secure the early delivery of a public open space which will not only provide the residents of Wiston and beyond with access to a highly quality open space environment that has never been publicly accessible before, but as I mentioned earlier, we will in due course see this investment repaid from developer contributions as the Garden Village is developed. Finally, from a town centre's perspective, we are proposing to bolster the funds available for the regeneration of Highton Town Centre to ensure that momentum, as we've said, is maintained. With regards to Kirby Market, we propose to ensure that store rental rates are competitive and across all of our town centres, we propose to seek to develop a programme of events and promotions to encourage residents and visitors alike to shop local, thereby improving their vitality, their vibrancy and viability of all of our centres. Colleagues, I trust you will agree that this package of investment puts our communities across the borough at its heart.
Anybody else that wishes to speak? Who hasn't spoken? Councillor Morgan, would you like to speak?
Colleagues, just had the opportunity. Councillor Cashman said about the LED lights, and he said it was a couple of years ago. Colleagues, it was nearly 10 years ago when we installed those lights. So I think we've had a good run for our money, and it was a unanimous decision because it was mentioned the climate change. So I'm just a bit confused why you're now objecting against it, but never mind. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm pleased to get back to talking about something positive. I have nothing but praise for Councillor Aston and my colleagues in the Labour group who have developed this hugely positive and a bit ambitious budget. You can't make a decision on a budget without thinking about what has happened in the past and what will happen in the future. So we mustn't regard that Knowsley has lost more than 50% of its funding since 2010. Despite being one of the areas of the country which most needs support from the national government, our funding was cut more than anywhere else in the country. We have had to cope with losing £100 million of funding, which we should have been able to use in delivering the services which our residents value and sorely need. We have fought back by taking a positive approach to inclusive growth, bringing new businesses and new jobs into the borough. The other parties really should start taking notice, because it's our approach and our commitment to growth which means that we can invest £26.5 million to help Knowsley a great place to live, work and visit. It is the Labour group that has put the hard work in. We have kept this borough on its feet for the last 10 years, and now we have a huge opportunity to invest in the services our residents value and need. This is a budget that protects vulnerable residents, improves our environment and town centres, drives inclusive growth and tackles the climate change agenda. We will secure the council's future and repair some of the damage that has been done by the government. It's a budget that we should all be proud of to support. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Councillor Ashton, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Let me see if I can summarise this for members. We have the Lib Dems propose that we hand over our parks that fall within the Town Council boundary and then give them 1.7 million as well, just for good measure. Then they propose to take 1.2 million out of monies earmarked for the regeneration of Highton Village. So basically, we have the Prescott Lib Dems saying to Highton residents, Prescott's sorted now, too bad for Highton. Even though they themselves have never supported any of the plans for Prescott. Then we had the Green Party advocating a full public consultation to ask everyone what they would like to spend the £10 million on. The residents of Knowsley have a series of legitimate questions to ask the Lib Dems, the Greens. Just what is the point of having a Green Party councillor? Why have we put you where you are to represent us and take difficult decisions, but you're stopping to consult with residents? You're not even taking your responsibilities seriously. Do the Green Party actually know how local government works? Is this what Green Party leadership looks like? I suppose, Madam Mayor, we should have expected something like this from the party who nationally have two leaders, can't even decide which one to have. You couldn't make this up. But Madam Mayor, it gets better. Both the Greens and the Lib Dems propose no council tax increase, an increase that equates to 38 pence per week for Band A. And I'll say that, Madam Mayor, if I may, for the final time tonight, 38 pence a week for Band A and just 8 pence a week for those receiving council tax support. A loss of 1.1 million of permanent funding gone forever just to fill a leaflet. How irresponsible, how cynical, how sad. Both Lib Dems and Greens are playing with local services to simply chase a cheap headline, while back at the ranch they plan massive precept increases at town council level. Unbelievable. This Labour Council will never play games with services that are much needed for our communities. Labour will always recognise our responsibilities and take seriously the trust placed in us to take decisions on behalf of our communities. In essence, to do our job, with the best interests of our residents at the heart of all that we do. Not taking decisions for the sake of a cheap headline or a social media post. That's not leadership, that's just cynical politics. Tonight, Madam Mayor, we've been exposed to the true face of Lib Dem and Green Party politics. To be honest, Madam Mayor, I think we've wasted enough time on the nonsense. We've got a lot to do, and I suggest that we get on with it. So, Madam Mayor, I would like to get back to the Labour Group budget proposals before Council tonight. Just to recap our proposals. Set a council tax increase of 3.99% to provide a sustainable budget in future years. Proposes to no cuts and no job losses. Invest 12 million in demand and inflationary cost pressures in key services. Invests an additional 14.5 million in key services and projects impacting across every part of the borough. The investment protects vulnerable residents, helps tackle climate change emergency, improves the borough's environment, helps deliver vibrant town centres, drives the borough's inclusive growth, and sustains and transforms key services. I really can't see, Madam Mayor, how anyone could vote against a budget that protects key services, invests £26.5 million and leaves us in a strong position to deal with future years. Madam Mayor, can I urge all my colleagues to support the Labour Group budget? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Taylor? No, you can't speak now, Councillor Taylor. Sorry, point of order now, you can't do it. Thank you. That was the final wind up of the meeting, the debate. I'm now going to put the original motion of proposals by Councillor Ashton to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? Would anybody like to abstain? Okay. The original motion is carried. Thank you. Seeing there is no further items on the agenda, can I thank you all for attendance here this evening and declare the meeting closed and wish you all a safe journey home. Thank you.
Please be upstanding for the Mayor.